Hello, welcome to the Rooted Souls podcast. My name is Becca Spear and I will be your hostess. Here I am offering you talks on spirituality and self-development that bring you back down to earth. Bridging the gap between ethereal ideas and mindful realism. These talks illuminate the magic in the mundane and facilitate discernment in the far out for a life rooted in wisdom. This podcast is for conscious seekers who are just opening up to spirituality and personal growth, or those of you who've been on that journey for a while and you're realizing that things just are not what they seemed at first, or for those who are anywhere in between. I am so glad you're here. I invite you to either take a walk or sit down and relax with something nice and warm to drink and just let this wash over you. Take what resonates, leave the rest, and just know that this is my gift to you. I hope that it serves you. I am so glad you're here, and I hope that you enjoy the show. Today, Jennifer and I are going to be demystifying death and bringing reverence back to the experience. Jennifer ODonnell is a certified permaculture landscape designer, specializing in organic garden design in Boston, Massachusetts, and the surrounding areas. She's an artist, UI, UX designer, and is in the process of becoming a death doula. For as long as she can remember, she's been fascinated with death. She believes that nature is the greatest equalizer and that the closer we can get to integrating natural processes back into our lives, or deaths in particular, the better adjusted humanity can become. Jennifer is an alternative death care and green burial advocate, providing services to organizations such as the Green Burial Massachusetts Council and the Funeral Consumers Alliance, and continues to educate people on the importance of bringing death back into our lives, and is here today to open our minds to the topic. So, Jen, I'm so excited to have you here. This topic is super edgy for me and probably my least favorite, but that's why it's so important to talk about. And before we get started, I just want to give the listeners a little bit of context. I met Jen maybe about 5 years ago, and the night I met her, I had set the intention to meet a soulmate friend. I was newly back in Massachusetts. I barely knew anyone, and I was just craving connection and companionship with somebody who really got me. And so I went to an old friend's birthday party that night. You guys actually know her if you've been listening to the show, Laura Smith. She's the person I co-created the episode on creativity as a catalyst for our individual and collective healing. And true to Laura's form, she was having this birthday celebration with some sort of moon honoring circle, setting the stage for this party. There's candles, there's art supplies in the living room, there's different rooms to do different things, artisanal local cocktails that she handcrafted. One room's full of tarot cards and divination. The other room has musical instruments. So we're in this magical wonderland, right? And I don't even remember the moment locking eyes with Jennifer ODonnell, but my life was forever changed. So here's Jennifer, one of the witchiest, most spiritual, grounded, down-to-earth mamas I know. I have been lucky enough to garden with this woman, experience her internal, like inside interior design and landscape design. And she's one of the most fun people to take walks with, because she points out any plant you find in the forest and often invites you to sniff it. So without further ado, here is Jennifer ODonnell. I can't wait to hear everything you have to say about this topic today.
Thank you so much. Also, something that I was remembering is the first time you and I hung out together, I believe it was at Zing Cafe. And I always try to find an opportunity to talk to people about death. And as soon as I touched upon it with you, you're like, I don't go there. I'm scared of death. And I'm like, this is perfect. Like, we joked about how I'm like the witch of darkness and you're the witch of light, and how there's like this wonderful dichotomy there. And I always remember that. So it's kind of perfect that we're having this conversation right now.
I'm beaming.
You are beaming.
It's so true. I experienced a succession of rapid deaths around me at a young age. and from my perspective, it's unusual. I had teachers, students, community members, family members all die in 1 year. I think I was in 4th grade, and it was rapid. And there was a suicide made to look like a murder. Like it was dark, and I wanted to have nothing to do with it. I went to a wake of my friend in 5th grade, and she was very sick, and I wasn't prepared. I didn't know it was going to be an open casket. I was raised Jewish, and I didn't even understand or know that concept. And it was very jarring, and I'm not going to go into the details, but I saw a lot of stuff after that wake that I couldn't get out of my head or my visual periphery. So yeah, I had a very upsetting early experience with death with very little guidance. I had some, but how do you explain death to a child? And it was just too much too fast, I think, for my developmental state. But anyway, I digress. Yes, when you met me, you saw the end product of somebody who really prefers not to think about it, and also having some sort of awareness that wasn't the right way for me to orient toward it. So I was both dismissive, but also excited that I had somebody in my world who could kind of bring back the reverence to it for me. I knew from my, college travels to South America that other cultures have a very different relationship to death than Americans. So I know, and I knew when I met you, that my orientation was not a healthy one. And I let you know where I was at because I needed you to have context with me. But I've continued to pull on you over the years. Like, what do you know about this? Can we talk about that? Just little by little, because it's very touchy subject. And I'm going to pause and let you give me some feedback, because really you're the show today.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't think that that your perspective is wrong. I think it's a very Western way of looking at death, right? And even how to explain death to a kid. I don't even think that adults know how to explain death to each other, right? Because we just have this, I don't want to call it warped because I'm putting a label on it, but this maladjusted, I guess that's still a label, relationship with death, right? And like you, growing up, I was fortunate enough to have a great grandmother who I loved dearly. I think I was maybe about 10 or 11 when she passed away. And I was riveted just looking around the room. And, it's like, again, maybe it's because I grew up Irish Catholic, right? But everyone was just bawling their eyes out and super sad. And from there, like you, I had a lot of death as a kid growing up, right? My stepbrother passed away tragically, very young. My stepdad, I had mentioned, I had an uncle who died in a plane crash, who was my favorite uncle. My aunt was this vivacious, like young, beautiful, healthy woman who passed away at 52. I had a young, healthy boyfriend pass away when I turned 27. So I've experienced, and then, friends, other family members. And I think it was after Devin had passed away, this was my boyfriend, that my view on death sort of changed. And like I was saying before, there was so much death in my family that even the funeral director joked about us having like a punch card, right? And I feel like there's a certain point, and this was when I was kind of young, where something in me sort of switched. So there was a couple of levels of switches. When I was young, I realized that everything is going to die. Like after you sort of get like blow after blow after blow, and you're sort of an introverted kid and you're out in nature all the time, you sort of can see that everything is going to die. And I didn't understand why we were just still thrashing around in grief if this was something that was going to happen to us for the rest of our lives. Every person that we love the most is going to die. So how do we sort of emotionally and spiritually and mentally sort of prepare for that? And I didn't think that the current way that we do things made any sense. And so that's when I started to sort of study it up a little bit more about other types of ways that cultures handle death and how ours became this way, essentially. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that with me. My heart I don't know, it breaks. I know I'm having probably a more emotionally immature experience with this as we've chatted about, but I just, yeah, I'm like, I don't want that to happen to her. I don't want that to have to happen to her. And that's why we're here, right? Talking about it. How do we redirect ourselves towards it to hold reverence and understanding, and I don't know what other words to use, but how to have a more realistic and engaged and holy experience with it.
Right.
So where can we take this now? I mean, I'd like to hear more about the multicultural view. And I also want to hear how, as American culture and society, we also kind of moved toward where we are today.
Right. So like a little bit of a brief history is, so I will refer to, what I will call it the funeral industrial complex, essentially, right? And it was basically started, I'll say, during the Civil War, when all the soldiers were sort of being, shipped back home, the deceased soldiers. And that's sort of when like formaldehyde became like brought onto the scene, right? And these doctors, or I don't even want to call them doctors, these people who were actually responsible for shipping the bodies back, learned that pumping these bodies full of formaldehyde was a way to preserve the bodies going back to their families, and realized, wow, we can make a lot of money off of this. And even back then, $100 a body, that's a lot of money for parents to have to, or whomever, wives, to have to pay for these bodies to go back. And so that's where the funeral industrial complex was sort of birthed, was off of charging people to keep these bodies intact all the way back home. And from there, you have these funeral homes that take up, the amount of hardwood that is needed to actually create all the caskets we have in 1 year is unbelievable. All the formaldehyde is so uneco-friendly, all the casket liners, right? And so there has been this whole industry created around death care that has not only kept us sort of trapped in thinking that there's no other way to go about this, but trapped in thinking that there's no other way than to go through them to handle death. And that has really done a lot to, I don't want to call it like the emotional ecosystem of Western culture, but really, because we have become, because of that, so removed from death. I mean, you think about it, your grandmother is in her best outfit, kind of stuffed and makeup on her, just like she's alive. And we just have this remove of, no, this person's actually dead. Like we need to process this. And, before the Civil War, there were so many home funerals, right? Like people washed the body. They, with like lavender soap, they had a real ceremony about it. In the living room, I believe it was actually, because that's where they would actually have the dead. They would actually have the dead stored out in the living room. And so there is some terminology in there that is because of, that's where they would do the death stuff. And and they're actually still doing that today. And there's a whole movement of people right now who are doing, especially on the Cape, they're actually bringing the home burials back into play, just basically reclaiming the dignity around death, instead of just, giving into these funeral homes who just want to make a lot of money off of mourning people, which I think is, a travesty. So yeah, there's a whole new movement coming up with death doulas and green burials, where you're actually just wrapped in a shroud. We can talk more about that later. But really paring it down, bring it back to basics, so the family who are left can actually mourn in a more natural way. And there's a lot more I have to say about that, but that's just sort of like an overview. Yeah.
Thank you for going back to the Civil War. I was raised Jewish. And so in Jewish tradition, we don't use caskets or formaldehyde. The body is washed ceremonially. Actually, the body is never left from death to burial to, there's a number of philosophies behind that I'm not going to get into. But then either the body is wrapped in a shroud, and that's it in Israel, or in the States, we use just a simple pine box with a Star of David. And, nobody really debriefed me on how to engage with the ceremony. I think we met with a rabbi the day before. And the other thing is the funerals happen very quickly. You're supposed to get the body in the ground right away. So there's no, week of waiting and getting, gathering people and organizing things and buying the casket. Like, it's very simple and streamlined. But I just remember, sitting around with the rabbi to tell stories about my grandparents, and then getting to the funeral, having the ceremony. And then, they said, that the grandkids will roll the casket to the grave or to the hearse. I didn't know that was going to happen. So all of a sudden I have my hand on this casket and it's really strange. And then we get to the graveyard and do the ceremony. And then each person takes a shovel and shovels dirt onto the casket. And I just remember hearing the rocks and the soil hit the casket, and how that actually was the moment that I was really aware of how detached I had been from the reality of death.
Wow. I just got goosebumps. Yeah. I mean, it's real. And it reminds me of, so when I was living in Seattle, right, there was this gentleman, his name is Brian Flowers, and he owns this, for lack of a better term, like a green burial, like cemetery, right? And he was recounting, he's like, one of the first moments that I really knew that what I was doing, like my profession, like I chose the proper profession. He's like, when I let these like 3 grandsons dig their grandmother's grave, right? So it was like in this beautiful field where there's wildflowers growing and trees and other bodies, sort of doing their thing. And he's like, these 3 boys had finally finished digging their grandmother's grave. And he's like, I walked upon them, and they were, all 3 of them were like holding each other and laughing with their feet dangling in the hole. So proud, and just like talking about how hard that was, and the big rocks, and how proud their grandmother would be of them dangling their feet in the hole where she was going. And how that just struck him as like, this is it. This is the only way it needs to be. And to sort of bring it back to what we do today, we're so afraid of this hole that the caskets go in, that we even have like, astroturf on top, so you cannot see the hole. So this whole process has been like stolen from us in a way, right? And so sort of what I was touching on before, and like sort of, what you were touching on there, when you were putting the gravel onto the casket, is just like you said, like it's the reality. It's like the visceral reality of the death, which sort of, yeah, I don't know. I feel like when you can actually put your hands on it, especially when it comes back into nature, and again, we can talk about this with green burial, like to know that it's going back to a greater process is comforting in a way,
The removal or absence of ceremony in one's life, I feel like, is detaching in every area. And so as we talk about the ceremonies we have in place here, and I can't help but consider this the abundance and depth and involvement of ceremony in other cultures I can think of, it makes me, sad to think about how minimal the engagement is with the process, and then how big and often suppressed we are with the grief. And I can't help but wonder how much the ceremony and the choices we make around death help with our processing it. And I think about how much our Hollywood and our entertainment system, people are so drawn to murder mysteries and crime and death phenomena, and just there's so much murder and violence, and then we're not looking at death. And so for me, I don't like to watch those movies because it brings up too much uncomfortable emotion for me, and it doesn't feel like entertainment. But I pause and I'm curious about how people seem so enraptured with it on the television, but don't have a true connection to it in their own internal landscape. So I don't know if what you can share about that dynamic.
I feel more drawn. So you had spoken about ceremony in the beginning, right? And how we're sort of removed from that process, right? And I feel like, can I give a little anecdotal right now? Yeah.
You got it. This is your show.
Okay. Fantastic. So I feel like this sort of brings in a lot of the different points that we have talked about. So I mentioned my boyfriend who passed away, right? And this is tragic as hell, right? Tragic as hell. And this will like circle back. So Devin, he was 26-year-old farmer, like strapping buck, like suspenders, built his own yurt, like just this vivacious, like bright-eyed, gorgeous human being, right? And on my 27th birthday, he fell off my roof and he died. And it was awful, right? The worst. And I had to, when we got to the hospital, I had to call, I told the doctor that I wanted to call his mom. I didn't want some stranger to call her. And I had to like hear like the wailing of a woman who just lost her child, right? And when she zoomed to Boston to be with me, you know, she just looked at me. I thought she was going to hate me. I thought I was going to get sued. You know, I didn't know what if she was going to try to like hurt me. I had no idea. And she just looked me in the eyes and she's like, what happened? We're going to get through this. And I was like, who are you, woman? Like, who are you? You like, you know, what the hell? So fast forward through these days after, and she's like, Jennifer, I don't know what to do. She's like, we're Buddhist. She's like, he's Buddhist. I don't know. We're going to have a Buddhist funeral. She's like, I don't know what to do with his body. And I was like, well, funny that as a person who talks about death all the time and interested in death, Devin and I had spoken about this.
Wow.
And I was like, Devin, like, if you were to ever die, what would you want to have happen to your body? And he was like, Viking burial. And I was like, of course you'd want a Viking burial. Of course, like flaming red hair, man, like just big Viking. He looked like a Viking anyways. And so when his mom was like, I don't know what to do. I was like, well, I think he would want a Viking burial. And she's like, are you kidding? And I was like, nope. And she's like, we're going to make this happen. So we had a mission. We had a goal. Like, okay, this is Devin's spirit. Like his smile when he told me that this is what he wanted, like this is going to drive us to make this goddamn happen. So she called her brother, who was a guitar maker in Asheville, North Carolina, who Devin rode his bike down, built a guitar, rode it back up to Massachusetts. So this guitar builder came, made a long boat, and come the day of the service, what they had done, it was on the Cape, someone at low tide swam out, put a stake in the ocean, like banged it down, whoever they did so. Come time for the service, there was a rope that had from the shore wrapped around that post all the way back out to shore. And so you have like 200 people. This was like kind of legal, kind of not legal, but we still did it. And I had no idea that I was going to be the one to pour the ashes of Devin. I had no idea. Pour the ashes into this boat. His dad, kerosene, we lit it on fire, and someone pulled, it was Layla who pulled the cord out. And so Devin in ashes in this boat like, rocked out to sea, and it was on fire. And for about 7 minutes, we're all just kind of watching this thing, all like 250, like from his horseback riding instructor, his best friend, me, everyone. And when that boat finally sank, everyone cheered. It was this wave of like beauty and emotion, and he is here and he is laughing and he is loving it. And we were all just like, fuck yes. And to feel that emotion and to feel that connectedness to everyone there, and that connectedness to Devin, and that connectedness back to nature. Because after that, whenever the tide came in and out, whenever I saw the waves come in and out, that was like his breath. That was his heartbeat. And that like forever changed me. Even to this, like this has been, 11 years at this point. And I still talk about that experience like it was yesterday, because that to me was like such a real celebration. And from there on out, whenever someone is like sick or dying, or like there is the mourning, there is the grief, but there's a lot of pride when you think about this person's whole entire life. And if it's wrapped up in grief and your sadness, you're sort of overshadowing the life that was lived and how proud you are of that person, And yeah, so that's where the ceremony comes in, right? Is to, if you can't, it's hard to do that when you don't talk about death like it's, because it is next to you all the time. It's next to everyone we love. And to get a better relationship with that, like even his mom, that was her baby. We talk about Devin as we are so proud of him. Not that he's some like person who tragically died. He is this person who is still around that we are still proud of, that still brings this like smile to our face. And even right after he died, when that's supposed to be the saddest, and it was fucking sad, right? We still had this beautiful glow hum of him next to us. Sorry for all that. Not sorry, but still that.
Thank goodness for mute. I've been over here bawling my eyes out. You shared with me early on that this man that you were in love with, that had been the most healing romantic relationship for you, had died in your past. And it marked my experience of you. It was profound to have you share that with me, to know somebody who went through that, but you had never shared that funeral story. And that just changed my life.
Oh,
and I know that it will change many who are to listen to this. So thank you to you, and thank you to Devin, and thank you to his wonderful, wise mother. I know this is for another episode that I'm sure we'll choose to record, but that experience you had with her orientation toward you led you to Buddhism and to chanting. It's Nichiren Buddhism, Nichiren. And because of you sharing that interaction between the two of you and how that led you to Nichiren Buddhism, I started going to chanting circles with you for, I don't know, a better part of a year or more. And that's a beautiful story and a beautiful catalyst, and just another, a reference point for how we never know what somebody will mean to us, or how they'll impact our lives, or how the ripple effects will impact the world. But thank you to Devin and to his mother, and to you for carrying on their legacy and your legacy, and this message that we're talking about today. You are I just see you, and I looked at your astrology birth chart, so I know that you are such a voice for this, and such an important part of changing the world in this way.
Thank you. Jeez. The tears, here they are, but they're healthy, and it's okay, and it's necessary, right? And it's from that experience where I definitely got more into how can I change this? How can I help other people? Everyone's going to experience death in their own way, because of culture or religious preferences, etc. But how can I show people, or how can I teach those who want to know about other relationships with death, and that's sort of where I got into the whole, the death doula stuff, right? Like, how can I be a spiritual guide while also sort of like, what you do with this podcast, right? How can I be this sort of like spiritual guide, but also grounded in the reality of here and now in this society? And that's from that experience, based on all the experiences leading up to it, and that is sort of what launched me into really getting into death doulaism and green burial, and bringing people and nature back together in that way. Yeah.
Woo! The feelings are flowing through me.
Good.
Man, if I wasn't awake before, these tears are waking me up now.
Absolutely.
So do you feel like there's anything to share more about your knowledge on other cultures, other cultures, techniques, ceremonies, mindsets, philosophies? I'm at a loss for words right now. I'm very wrapped up in my emotion right now. But if you can dabble on that, and then I think let's just dive into what's possible here today. And it's so cool my gosh, the ceremony you created for Devin, I'm going to be thinking about that for a while. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm glad. Thank you. In terms of other cultures, I mean, there's so many, but I feel like, I don't want to say it's like the less capitalistic ones, but it's true. There's joy around it, and there's celebration. And Caitlin Doherty has written a book, and I believe it's When Smoke Gets in Your Eye. I believe that's the book. But Kate, she's written a lot about cultures all around the world, and there's so many fascinating ones. I can't touch on one specifically. The only one that I can really, with like conviction, talk about is this one, and how it's so different from, there's so much to say that I almost have like a brain meatball around it. But what was the second half of that question? Sorry, I got lost.
I know this. A lot's happening.
So much. There's so much.
So just if you can talk about the traditions of any other cultures. I know I've got some experience with South American culture and also Jewish culture.
Yeah.
So in Judaism, food's a big part of it, and it lasts for a week, and we cover our mirrors, and the process is really about being away from the rest of life and focusing on this person, and the community and other people, I guess, the community coming together to feed you, to comfort you, so that there's this contained space to grieve.
Right.
And the idea of covering the mirrors is like, all right, you're not thinking about that right now. You're thinking about, your internal process.
Right.
And there's no chemicals. It's a very grounded experience. And, if you're not a highly religious Jew, oftentimes this is like one day now, like you just have kind of this event where the food and people come visit, and the rabbi will come to your house. I'm such a deeply emotional person. I want that. Like, I think that I would need that moving forward. And man, for the record, I want a Viking funeral.
Okay, I was going to ask, what do you want to happen? What do you actually want to happen? I know it's hard for you to talk about, but I'm just curious.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. So I've never been asked this question. Might as well do it on my freaking podcast in the moment. What do I want? So I lived in Kansas for a little while, and there's not a whole lot of wild to get away to. And I am a forest fairy. I need nature to thrive. So I used to bike through this graveyard that was very forested. It was one of the few forested areas. And when I say forest, I'm not talking New England big trees. I'm talking like little new growth, but like any moss, like anything ferns, like get me to some sort of forest-like environment. And there was this graveyard. So I would bike through it very often. And it was the first time I really saw some graves that weren't on a lawn. And I don't know how they got there, or how intentional it was, or if it had just been grown over. But I thought, I don't want to be on a lawn.
Right.
And I don't love the idea of being burned. Although if it were in a ship in the water, or let's talk more about that in a minute. But I know for a fact I don't want chemicals in my body. I mean, you know me, I'm a green advocate. So I spend most of my time avoiding chemicals in your living body, in my living life. So, I've had brief thoughts of like, I want to be, put under a tree, or I'd say most of my thoughts around this are, I don't want to think about it.
Right.
But since we're going there right now.
Dig deep, girl.
You know what?
Literally.
But like, you know what? Maybe I should save this, because I don't really know what all my options are. So maybe I should let you get to it. But the the basis for it is I don't want to cause more harm to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
I also would love to encourage those that love me to have the release and support that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to be celebrated, right? And ideally, while I'm alive, I don't want to wait till my funeral for people to really get to the depth of what I mean to them. But, you know, that would be nice. And I'd love my death to contribute to those that still go on.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. Everything you've touched on, I agree with. Absolutely. And, you know, when I talk to people about green burial, so yes, there's the conventional burial, right? Casket, formaldehyde, I call it conventional, right? Catholic, whatever, everyone, a lot of cultures do this. Formaldehyde, casket liner, boom, in the ground. So much hardwood, so much material, right? There's that. There is super expensive. I love the Jewish way of doing it, right? It's pretty green. It's lovely. Then you have the cremation, and I mean, there's aqua. There's so many different new fangled ways of deathing. But I know your face. There's so many ways. There's sky burials. I mean, there are on a mountaintop, and you can get, you know, let nature take you that way. But I love the thought of green burial, right? And I always say that everything that is on this planet, everything that you can see and look at has come from the planet. We are continually extracting the cell phones that we use, the houses, when you go into Manhattan, all those buildings, that has all come from inside the planet. And I always say, like, our last thank you to this planet that has given us everything, has given us the people we love. Like, to quote Carl Sagan, you know, like the pale blue dot, everything. The last thing that we can do to say thank you to this planet is to give it our beautiful, yummy body back to it, to create more soil for like the rest of everything, right? For trees, for plants, for growing crops, to feed just the ecosystem, right? And it's so minimally invasive, and folks are like, oh, it's going to mess up the water table. It doesn't. And you don't even have to dig down 6 feet deep. It's 4 feet. That's where all like the aerobic stuff is happening. It's 4 feet deep. And so it's just so simple. It's so legal in a lot of states. And what's very interesting is there's not, here in Massachusetts, who you would think is, you know, super liberal, we do not have a sole like green burial cemetery. Here in Cambridge, you can, at Mount Auburn Cemetery, there are like little areas that you can do green burials, but we do not have one main cemetery, and they're still actually looking for it. So there are some organizations. There's Green Burial Massachusetts, that has a lot of information where you know your rights, you know, that you can actually, burial at sea is legal. You can actually, like, not even just not even just like cremation, you can actually 25 miles out, if you've done the proper paperwork, do a burial that way, a sea burial. Wow. So there's so much information out there. We just think that it is like one of two ways, cremation or conventional. And we have so many rights. And you can also look at the Funeral Consumers Alliance of Massachusetts, that tells you all that you need to know, again, your rights as someone who is dying or someone who is helping someone pass along. So those are really amazing resources if you want to know like what you can do or your family can do. Yeah.
Wow. I'm stunned.
Yeah. There's so much. We just aren't educated about it because we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about this inevitability. And the more that we can do so, and the more comfortable that we can get, and the more curious that we can become, and more educated, the more we know, and the more that we can change things, right? And make something like this more commonplace than having to go through all these, you know, financial obstacles and weird, there's just so much more to know, and we just need to be more educated on it. and what's interesting, I don't want to mess their names up, but there are 2 legislators right now that are advocating for green burial to be here in Massachusetts, to be like more commonplace. I'll get those reps. I'll send you the link to that to that website. But yeah, things are pushing through, and this is becoming, more and more popular, which is great.
Well, and because of voices like you. So thank you. What would be your choice? How would you want to be dealt with?
You want my real answer or my funny answer?
Both. Which one should we go first?
Let's go for the funny one first.
Yeah, let's do funny first.
So I always tell my friends that at my funeral, my body, I want to be turned into wine-infused gummy bears. And if you have to eat me. You have to have one of me, because you can, it's gelatin, right? I mean, that's my funny answer. And that can actually happen. And would you eat one of my gummy bears?
For you?
Yeah.
For you?
Yeah.
I would eat one of your gummy bears.
Thank you very much.
Especially if it was red.
Okay. Noted.
And organic and biodynamic.
Yeah,
and
it's me.
All Jen. Yeah. That's like taking in church, right? I don't know.
The Eucharist.
Yeah. A Jen Christ.
Yeah.
You're a goofball. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
And my real answer, thank you. And my real answer is super simple. Some organic Irish linen, some lavender plants planted on top of me, maybe a sweet little Amelanchier tree, which are my favorite, or a witch hazel, and that's it. It. Something where someone can maybe sit under and be like, oh, I remember that Jennifer O'Donnell. She was sweet. I'm glad she didn't choose that gummy bear option. But yeah, I just want to give my body back in the least destructive way possible. Yeah, and that's that. So thank you.
And for the record, I will never see a witch hazel and not think of you.
No, you have one in your front yard
that you planted.
planted.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
This is so moving. Yeah. Thank you so much for showing up and being so vulnerable to share these stories with us, to do the work that you're doing. This is so important and so quiet. And that's why we called it the D word. Yeah, I'm just really grateful for the work that you're doing and that you were willing to show up today and talk to us all about it. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. And thank you for giving, thank you for giving, I don't want to say people like me, but just a voice to other folks who aren't doing anything that's like so mainstream, that it's still changing the world, soft power. So thank you for that, Becca.
My pleasure. I love you.
Love you too.
And I will put, as usual, the information of the resources and organizations that we discussed in the episode description. And if you want to reach out to Jen, what are you open for in terms of services? What can people get a hold of you for? I'm going to give them links to everything, but why don't you announce it?
Yeah. So organic garden design I'm doing. I'm also UI UX. So it's basically, you can look it up, UI UX, and any sort of advice that one would need on alternative death care services. I'm happy to help out. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. This woman wears many hats. And as a previous permaculture designer, I can say that this woman is gifted beyond belief. I don't know how much more time she has to take on new garden clients or design clients, but if you're lucky enough to get into her schedule, you are highly blessed and favored. All right, signing off for now. Talk to you next time. Bye. Okay, thank you for listening and becoming part of this community. If you loved this episode, I invite you to subscribe, share with someone you think would appreciate it, or leave a review. This helps me to learn what resonates with you so I can deliver more of what you want and reach more people who can benefit from this content. If you want to reach me, please feel free to reach out on my website, www.beccaspirit.com. I would love to hear from you, get any feedback, and know what's on your mind. Until next time, take great care.
Have to have one of me because, you can, it's gelatin, right? I mean, that's my funny answer. And that can actually happen. And would you eat one of my gummy bears?
For you?
Yeah.
For you?
Yeah.
I would eat one of your gummy bears.
Thank you very much.
Especially if it was red.
Okay. Noted.
And organic and biodynamic.
Yeah,
and
it's me.
All Jen. Yeah. That's like taking in church, right? I don't know.
The Eucharist.
Yeah. A Jen Christ.
Yeah.
You're a goofball. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
And my real answer, thank you. And my real answer is super simple. Some organic Irish linen, some lavender plants planted on top of me, maybe a sweet little amelanchier tree, which are my favorite, or a witch hazel, and that's it. It. Something where someone can maybe sit under and be like, oh, I remember that Jennifer O'Donnell. She was sweet. I'm glad she didn't choose that gummy bear option. But yeah, I just want to give my body back in the least destructive way possible. Yeah, and that's that. So thank you.
And for the record, I will never see a witch hazel and not think of you.
No, you have one in your front yard.
that you planted. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
This is so moving. Yeah. Thank you so much for showing up and being so vulnerable to share these stories with us, to do the work that you're doing. This is so important and so quiet. And that's why we called it the D word.
The D word.
Yeah, I'm just really grateful for the work that you're doing and that you were willing to show up today and talk to us all about it. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. And thank you for giving, thank you for giving, I don't want to say people like me, but just a voice to other folks who aren't doing anything that's like so mainstream, that it's still changing the world, soft power. So thank you for that, Becca.
My pleasure. I love you.
Love you too.
And I will put, as usual, the information of the resources and organizations that we discussed in the episode description. And if you want to reach out to Jen, what are you open for in terms of services? What can people get a hold of you for? I'm going to give them links to everything, but why don't you announce it?
Yeah. So organic garden design I'm doing. I'm also UI UX. So it's basically, you can look it up, UI UX, and any sort of advice that one would need on alternative death care services. I'm happy to help out. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. This woman wears many hats. And as a previous permaculture designer, I can say that this woman is gifted beyond belief. I don't know how much more time she has to take on new garden clients or design clients, but if you're lucky enough to get into her schedule, you are highly blessed and favored. All right, signing off for now. Talk to you next time. Bye. Okay, thank you for listening and becoming part of this community. If you loved this episode, I invite you to subscribe, share with someone you think would appreciate it, or leave a review. This helps me to learn what resonates with you so I can deliver more of what you want and reach more people who can benefit from this content. If you want to reach me, please feel free to reach out on my website, www.beccaspirit.com. I would love to hear from you, get any feedback, and know what's on your mind. Until next time, take great care.